correspondent Alex Crawford became a household name while reporting from the front lines of some of the world's most dangerous conflicts, from Libya to Afghanistan, Iraq, Ukraine, Haiti and Myanmar. She's now fronting a new Sky News series with her colleague Stuart Ramsey called Hotspots, which brings us behind the scenes to glimpse the reality of covering some of the most hostile environments imaginable. Here's a snippet from a recent programme where her convoy comes under fire in the besieged Syrian city of Sueda.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on. We appear to be surrounded. And they are trapped, what it looks like. We need to, they'll be trying to work out how to get out of here. Suddenly, after a lot of quiet for a long period, there's an awful lot of firing.
Really remarkable footage, I'm sure you'll agree. Earlier I caught up with Alex and I began by asking her, in a moment like that, what exactly is she thinking as she's caught with bullets flying all around her?
I think probably, if I'm completely honest, I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to get out of here alive? Because I could see bullets coming and hitting off the side of the pavement on either side. I looked at one side and I could see like a spray of bullets, looked on the other side, a spray of bullets, and we're in front of a car that's full of fuel, so it's not exactly a fail-safe get out of jail free card. So in that instant, I was thinking, oh, geez, this isn't brilliant. It's not a good situation to be in. But I was also trying to fiddle with my Osmo and make it work. And actually, I thought, oh my God, I've actually got the shot, because I was actually filming when it started exploding. But in the moment, I switched it off. And then the next thing I saw was my producer pointing a camera at me. So I just started talking and just started. And the thing is, everyone was taken by surprise, because a minute before we'd just been, casually eating bananas and chatting about when are they then going to move forward. It had been quite quiet. So they were all taken by surprise as well, and they took a minute to react. And then they started firing in quite great numbers. And quite quickly after that, it became clear that they were going to push forward. And so we were just swept along with it and started going forward with them.
I know yours is a relatively atypical line of work, and it puts you into very unique and sometimes very terse and tense situations like that. But does it ever become normal to have gunfire, at the side of your vehicle or over your shoulder, and you're wondering how exactly you're going to get out of somewhere alive and safe?
It never becomes normal. It never becomes normal. It becomes, actually, I think when I've got a moment to think, I'm thinking, this is all becoming too often and I feel like each time I'm losing a life, if doesn't sound too sort of a fairy tale like, it just feels like I'm taking a lot of chances, and I've been very, very lucky, and I'm very mindful that I've been very lucky. A combination of sometimes just fateful luck, but also I'm also trying to convince myself and my team that we're taking good judgments as well. So it's a combination of both. I mean, sometimes you just have to have a dollop of luck, and that's what saves you. But the other thing that saves you is you have to have a really good instinct. You have to have a really good measure of what's going on, so that you are prepared for these unpredictable turnouts. There's some things there's a lot of unpredictability in covering hostile environments where there are a lot of men with guns. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But hopefully, I think we have quite a good measure of experience. I don't like taking chances. I don't want to be put in a position where I'm thinking I have to run for my life, but I do want to see what's going on and to get a good, accurate idea of who's telling the lies and who's telling the truth. And at that point, everyone, government official, military source, everyone, international and in Syria, were saying there was a ceasefire. So there was meant to be a ceasefire at that point. It had been agreed. And I was reporting back to my newsroom saying, you know what, it doesn't feel much like it.
Doesn't feel like it, yeah. You mentioned the experience that you've had there dealing with situations like that around the world, and your colleague Stuart is the same. And what's always been very remarkable about you and your colleagues in Sky is that you've always allowed people, you know, under the hood, if you like, and you've always been quite transparent about some of the challenges and, you know, how the sausage is made a little bit. So why now then start the new Sky News Hotspots YouTube channel where you're going to be publishing more of this more often? Why is now the moment to bring people inside the bubble a little bit?
I think we're all living in a very dangerous period of history in which all the truth tellers, which is the journalists, the genuine journalists who are trying to do a genuine job, tell the story as it is in an impartial and independent way, are being utterly undermined. And in many instances, they're being killed, jailed, intimidated, belittled, we're told constantly, I am told on a daily basis that I am telling lies and I'm not impartial and I cannot, I'm for one side or the other or all different sides, you know. I mean, some of the stuff I get sent is really quite shocking, and I think that's not a personal story. That is dangerous for all of us, because if you don't know who to believe, who do you think is telling the truth? I tell you who isn't telling the truth. Most of the politicians and the governments, the ones that don't want to have journalists around, who want to ban us from going into places, who won't let us see what's going on or how they're operating. Those are the ones you should be suspicious about, not the journalists who are trying to get in and who are being killed and jailed for doing that job.
Well, just on that note then about, who you can trust and who you can't trust, and it's a very fair point and a very good reason why to expand an offering like this. Sometimes, even in seats like this, it's not clear to me whether the world is becoming more dangerous or seems like it's veering towards extremism more, or whether it's just that we're now able to see more examples of it, and previously ignorance was bliss and now we're getting to see what it's really like. Given that you've seen a lot of these things up close for a quarter of a century now or thereabouts, do you feel like in your line of work, or do you feel in general that the world is becoming more dangerous?
I think obviously there's always been quite a level of extremism and autocratic behaviour from people in power. I think it's a combination of both, to be completely frank. I mean, we can't put the genie back in the bottle. We have got social media. Everyone has got mobile phones. I mean, there was a time when only people who worked for big television networks were able to transmit pictures. Now everyone can. Now absolutely everyone can. And that means there is a massive vacuum of what you think, what you know is true, because people are manipulating those pictures. People are telling you things that aren't true. People are using the same medium that bona fide, genuine journalists are using to organise their particular propaganda and to try and actually push a particular narrative. And that's why I think it's vital that journalists and journalism stand up collectively in one big collegiate force and start fighting back, start claiming back the narrative, start looking out for each other a bit more, start getting the public a bit more on our side. So that, the other thing that I think is blurring everything is that there are a lot of people who are not journalists, who are masquerading as journalists, and they are basically propagandists for various different outlets. And that's also dangerous. So this is not just a sort of an attempt to seize back the narrative for journalists and journalism, but it's also because it's on a digital platform, and that is the way forward. We're in there is a new frontier of broadcasting, and that is in the digital space. And we have to move from the old traditional ways of communicating and telling people what's happening and move much more authoritatively and proactively into the digital space.
Yeah, very interesting points, and I think a very interesting call to action, I think, for a lot of journalists there. Alex, we will let you go. The Sky News Hotspots YouTube channel is well worth to subscribe. Some of the other Hotspots content is already on the Sky News regular YouTube channel, but absolutely worth taking a look at. And thank you very much for taking us inside the bubble and letting us see exactly how it's all made. And take care on your next travels, wherever it brings you. Alex, thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Alex Crawford, truly remarkable journalist, Gavin. And I thought it was so interesting to hear her talk about how important it is now for journalists to, in some way, show how the sausage is made. And we talk a lot about that here on the podcast. But actually that idea that there are people out there who are performatively pretending to be journalists, and that actually giving people an insight into the authentic realism of bringing a story together and telling people the truth and facts is so important.
Yeah, in a way, there's a bit of me that laments that you have to start showing this much of how the sausage is made just to prove to people your bona fides and the authenticity of it. But at the same time, like, it is very impressive footage. That it is so raw, so uncurated. Actually, I love that it showcases that there's more people involved than just a cameraman and a reporter, that you need other drivers and fixers who are able to show you how to get from A to B and to try and do that safely. But I think overall it's a very valuable thing to show people just the risks to which they go, because I think so much of media internationally is beginning to feel so hollowed out, and people don't have the resources to do in-depth coverage like this. We were only discussing earlier on when we were talking about having Alex on, talking about how few outlets there are left in the world that have the resources to be able to send someone like Alex or like Stuart Ramsey on assignment and go deep into somewhere and be there for a week or two at a time, and for them not to know when they're going to get a chance to come home again. So it's great that Sky do that, but also now that they're showing us just how many sacrifices and how many different chances and the resources and the risks that are taken to try and put all that footage on our screens for a couple of minutes at a time. Yeah,
this type of journalism is really expensive, but it's never been more important in terms of having that frontline account. What did you think of, what was the most interesting takeaway from your conversation with her, did you think?
I didn't expect her to say, she refers to the Osmo, which is the little sort of mobile little camera microphone cameras, thing that we have in the industry, which is often worn by people in circumstances like this. It's sort of like a GoPro. I'm bowled over. I'm so amazed by her professionalism that when there's shots flying over her head, that she's like, I better make sure the camera's just filming there. And moreover, then when she sees someone pointing a camera at her, that she's like, well, this might never be a thing that we broadcast in the traditional sense of, stick it into a VT and you put it out for 2 minutes at a time. And yet she's like, oh, well, the camera's pointing at me, so I guess I'd better talk now and I'd better narrate.
Like her capacity to narrate in a crisis when her life is at risk, that she's still able to tell the story.
This is it. This is why I thought it was worth asking, even though it's a really inane question when you think about it in the abstract. Does that ever become normal? Like, is there ever a time at which, like, guns going over your head and you sort of thinking about getting the shot becomes normal? And I'm glad she said no, and yet she's still able to so level-headedly and with such poise and control narrate what it is that's going on around her, when literally there's a good chance that a bullet could nick off her or someone else in her party. Like, to have the presence of mind to be able to think, well, there's a camera rolling, so I better give it something now. Yeah. Just blown away.
Totally. I think one of the things that I have always admired most about Alex Crawford has been, as you mentioned during the interview there, her capacity to tell the human story, that, she wants to go to places and hear from people that live in communities about their lived experiences of what they're going through. And the Hotspots series, by the way, is, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it really is amazing. You can even go back over a couple of years and watch the older ones from the past, which they are really fascinating. History lessons in many ways about some of the world conflicts if you're not totally up to speed on things. But the episode that was most recently posted was with her colleague Stuart Ramsey, and the insight into trying to report from the West Bank and how challenging that was for him, even on a smaller scale, just trying to get access up country roads to get to villages, say, where Palestinians are living, to talk to them, to hear their first-hand accounts, to even just get to people is so challenging in those environments. It's not just when guns are flying, And
it's not something that you would ever glamorise or try to put into a report so as to show off the effort that you made. But at the same time, people will underestimate the effort that it makes. That it's not just a case of how do you get into the West Bank in the first place, and how exactly do you go about getting access to it when Israel isn't allowing formalised journalism in. But then if you're trying to get from A to B and there's a roadblock because a building's been knocked over and you just can't get there, the extremes to which you have to go through to be able to find the person who can tell the story is remarkable. One thing which we didn't get to discuss with Alex, which I meant to mention, in one of the previous Hotspots, it was around the time of the withdrawal of Western forces from Afghanistan and the downfall of Kabul and the return of the Taliban. And Alex mentions, just as a by-the-by, that the last time she was there, that she'd basically been seized by the Taliban and that the American military had to do a covert operation to smuggle her back out again. And that's just a thing that you do. And then just to have the gumption just to pull up your socks and just go back to work again the next time there's a crisis that needs covering. Just remarkable.
She's amazing. I think she's amazing. And we're so lucky to have her for a second time on the podcast. It was great.